Bandwidth for this podcast is brought to you by Ideate Software. Be sure to check out all of their great Revit applications designed to increase your productivity.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to BIMThoughts with Carl Storm and Dana DeFilippi. Your host today is Bill DeBevick, as usual. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. Dan Stine, or as we affectionately call him, the Polar Bear. Hey, Dan.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going.
Good. Define yourself again.
Oh, again. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every year your definition should change because we all evolve to
I'm
better
not sure
things.
it's changed. Well, there's one new interesting thing. So I'm an architect, a blogger, an author, an educator, and about to be an empty nester.
Oh my goodness.
Kids are all grown up and moving away.
Wow. Look at you, Mr. Empty Nester. I am also one of them empty nesters for a little while until the wife comes back. Whoopsie! Until my lovely daughter comes back from school and to start looking for a job and a career, and then she'll be gone forever probably. Who knows what
Exciting
will happen.
times.
It is exciting times.
Yeah, my daughter is about to move up into Carl's side of the border to Vancouver, Canada, to go to the Vancouver Film School.
Wow, fancy.
And my son's about to move to Minneapolis to go to the MCAD, the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. So,
oh boy, you guys like the cold.
Yeah, well, it was pretty nice. We visited late November in Vancouver. They don't really get much snow, so my daughter's excited about that.
Yeah, for us in Canada, Vancouver's essentially the tropics.
Really?
If you just hop over the island into Victoria, it's pretty sweet all year round.
It is pretty sweet all year round.
Canadian tropics. I'm doing air quotes.
I ended up going there for Build one year, and I picked up at the aquarium. I picked up 2 penguins, 2 little stuffed penguins. But one of them looked at the other one and asked, "You wearing a tux?" The other one said, "What if I am?"
Yeah, just before the show here, I was telling Dana that I brought my family to all the overseas builds that we've gone to, RTCs back in the day, and I think Vancouver was the first international one that we went to. And I even, on the built website or the blog, there's still a post there you can go search for called the RTC Family Vacation that I wrote. Has some pictures of me and the family in Vancouver.
Wow.
That was also my very first built or RTC at the time, was the Vancouver one. The evening event at the aquarium was pretty awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that was fun.
All right, so Dan, you are the VR guru, it seems. Everything I see.
VR/AR.
VR/AR guru. It seems like everything I see on Twitter, you're talking about VR/AR.
Well, I did see a sweet falcon from Vancouver, I think.
Yeah, that was our recent trip to visit the Vancouver Film School. I got to tour the Vancouver House, which was designed by Big, and then also Dialogue from Canada was involved. And we got to go up to the penthouse. It's still under construction, and there was a massive falcon on the railing on the balcony. It was pretty sweet.
How did they get the Millennium Falcon up there?
I don't know.
It's big, let me tell you.
Yeah. That's a different falcon, and I saw that last week in Florida.
Yeah, at the DW.
Yep, not the DL.
Not the DL.
To piggyback on your Vancouver story, Dan, we here in Calgary have the sister building that Big also designed to Vancouver House, Telesky. So in Vancouver, it goes from a triangle to a square, and here in Calgary, it goes from a square to a triangle. So it's basically inverted. But the same building, Dialogue's doing the production work for that as well. It's pretty sweet to have a building like that in the city. It gives a little props to that in the Bow. A couple of big name designs.
Does it have a similar unique um, characteristic where it actually the floor plate area doubles in size from the bottom to the top. It actually gets
It's in
bigger.
reverse. It's literally that building turned upside down.
Got it. So it gets bigger to smaller rather, which
Yeah,
is normal.
So there is balance in the force then.
there
Interesting.
is. Well, and it that all of it kind of plays to big sort of philosophy that they like to reuse and do things. So it's literally the same building, obviously a little few tweaks, but essentially
Oh, so
they turned it upside down here
so
in Calgary
they
or right
have
side up.
they have thrusters and it goes up in a big arc and then lands upside down in Vancouver. And then when you're in Calgary, it just flies right back over, so you never knew it left. Cool. That's really cool.
So, anyways, back to VR and AR.
Back to VR and AR. Meanwhile,
Somehow we got off track. It's not hard to do.
meanwhile, it is not hard to do. So, what's the new stuff these days in the VR AR? What should we be paying attention to? If we're already in it, what should we upgrade to? If we're not already in it, should we get into it? Is it too late? What's going on?
Sure. Well, at AU this past November, I did a short theater talk talking about the future of VR, and a couple of the highlights there were Enscape now supporting directly the RTX graphics
Ooh.
cards. So both the GeForce and the Quadro cards, and um, the the HTC Vive Cosmos, and
Mm-hmm.
mostly I speak to stuff that we have and use. I mean,
Sure.
there's other things out there that are pretty cool, but um, the the Cosmos is nice because it has inside out tracking, so you don't have to set up the sensors. There's some downsides to that, but it's worked out really nice in several situations that we've used it in so far. But yeah,
Isn't that is there's one by Facebook that it doesn't require trackers either, right?
right, and that's where I kind of qualified it. I don't remember what that one's called.
I don't remember what it's called either. I did see a video on it on the YouTubes from Linus Tech Tips.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
you're into
Oh yeah.
technical goody stuff,
Yeah, I like
that
this
is
stuff.
that's a great channel to follow. As well as another channel I highly recommend is called Read the Factory Manual with yours truly.
Nice.
Shameless plug.
Well, the interesting thing about the Cosmos is that it still requires a computer.
Okay.
It's not
Oh,
a
that's right.
standalone device, and that's really the only way Enscape works. Is it requires a pretty decent graphics card.
Right.
But
Well, I would think you'd still want one with a computer. I I don't I would think getting one without a computer where it's all built in would be pretty nice for like gaming and things like that. But for stuff we do in the BIM world, we need to have Rabbit loaded and all that other stuff, I would think.
there's one cool alternative that's sort of taken the Google Cardboard to the to a new kind of paradigm.
Okay.
With Enscape and other like Autodesk rendering in the cloud, you can render the photosphere images, so the static kind of single point of view, 360-degree view.
Uh-huh.
We've been using this tool called Ulio. It's a web-based tool where you can drag and drop these static images into Ulio, and then it has this really nice interface to create hotspots to connect them all together. And you can
Mm.
also upload a floor plan and then tie those hotspots in a floor plan view. And then that whole interface can be paired with a Oculus Go or multiple Oculus Go's,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just push those experiences to that device. So both the things I just mentioned we're actually using on this large hospital project that we're working on right now with Ewing Cole, and they asked us to bring VR to the groundbreaking, and
Uh-huh.
so we actually brought the full-blown uh, Vive, HTC Vive with a desktop computer with the RTX 6000 in it, um, to be able to load this large project, and it takes up like 15 gigabytes of GPU memory to load the whole model.
Wow.
So that's one aspect on that project, and the other aspect and is using the Oculus Go, and the client liked it so much their marketing department bought two, and so we have one Ulio account that's just for that project, and we have it paired with their devices, so we can push them new updates, or we can push them different projects. Like right now, I'm about to this week deliver another project that we're working on for the same healthcare client. So
Wow,
pretty cool stuff.
that's cool. So, so do you find that pushing those updates to the client without being there is a good thing, or is it better to be there when you do that?
Um, well, it depends probably. I mean, it depends on the client. It depends on the project.
Uh-huh.
That's a really good question. I think.
The great thing that I found with Julio and now some of the others that are coming out is the conference style that you're getting with multiple
Uh-huh.
people being able to be in the same immersive space. Um, and that really helps with, rather than one person having the goggles on or, the cardboard, as Dan was mentioning, and, them being like, oh, that's really cool over there in the corner. And you're like, what are you referring to? You don't really exactly know what they're looking at or what they're pointing at. But this conference room style VR and AR is becoming really
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, and to another cool thing that helps facilitate that is this Oculus Go. You can go to Best Buy and buy one for $150. So they're
Wow.
really affordable. It's basically a Google Cardboard, again, a really elevated version of it. It
Mm-hmm.
essentially has the phone technology in it, but it's not a phone. You don't have to stick your phone in there like with the Gear VR or the
Oh, okay.
traditional Google Cardboard, but it's not connected to a computer. It's just you download content through Wi-Fi.
Uh-huh. So you connect it to the cloud, if
Mm-hmm.
you will.
Yep.
It seems like you've been having some fun with the Trimble XR10 with HoloLens.
Yes. So now we can transition into AR. Yeah. So we got the Trimble XR10 with the Microsoft HoloLens 2 right at the end of 2019, and it's living up to the hype pretty well, I would say. It
Really?
has almost twice the field of view of the HoloLens 1. And for a little context, we've actually been using the HoloLens 1 now since early 2017. I actually wrote a blog post that was a case study with a client that's a bouldering gym facility where we took it to a warehouse and loaded the new model and walked around. And just this past November, we did a presentation on that at the Minnesota AIA convention. So we've had quite a bit of experience with the HoloLens 1. We actually have two devices, and with Fuser loaded onto those, you can actually connect the two or more devices together and experience the same holographic model in a space, whether it's in a conference room at scale or in the real space at 1-to-1.
What is Fuser?
Fuser is a VR and AR, and they do other things like clash detection. But Fuser is it is a standalone tool, but then they also have add-ins to Revit and a few other tools. And
Oh, okay.
so when you export a Revit model to Fuser, which would be somewhat similar to Revisto or perhaps BIMTrack or um,
It's an AR version of
Enscape.
Navis or something?
Well, it's a lot of things actually.
It
It's
does a lot of
yeah. If
stuff.
you get like their VDC version, it has the ability to simulate, do scheduling, and then animate the scheduling, and you can
Oh my
have
goodness.
um, cranes and things in there that show moving beams into place. It's pretty elaborate, but we mainly use it for AR, and we have used it for VR. It does handle really large projects nicely, and I'll let you get in on this in a minute, Carl. But I just want to finish this thought. In the cool thing about Fuser and VR is it has a lot more options for user interactivity within VR. You can select things that, like the cabinets or the reception desk or furniture and pick it up and move it in VR. And then you can list dimensions and select objects and have all the Revit data, like the cost or the area or the finish. All the stuff you'd see in the Revit properties can show up in VR. But then for AR, which is where we mainly use it, when you push it out to Fuser, you can position a virtual QR code somewhere in that model, usually like on an existing column. And then you print out a physical QR code. And then when you go to the site and tape it to that same existing column, and then you load up the model in the HoloLens and gaze at that QR code, it automatically aligns it in the space at 1-to-1 scale and usually rotated properly. But um, once you're in the model on the HoloLens with this Fuser app, it has some really cool automatic voice commands. So all the Revit categories are automatically tied to a voice command. So you can say something like hide furniture, and just instantly all the furniture disappears. Isolate structural, and you're only looking at columns and
Mm.
beams, and then show all. And then the last voice command that's pretty cool is the ability to rotate and move the model. That's just, other than the QR code, that's been in my experience, the easiest way to position a model. You say move left 2 feet, move up 4 inches, or in Carl's case, some metric number.
Right. Move left 2.54
Yeah,
centimeters.
yeah. I think it, instead of move up 3 inches, isn't it like move up 4 kilometers or no? Just kidding.
Something like that.
Yeah, move up 10 light years. Oh, too far.
So, anyways, what were
9.
you gonna say, Carl? I got a little long-winded.
That's all right. I was just going to say that I think Fuser comes with a very special avatar as well, right, Dan?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so CTC, the the software company, it used to be also a reseller. They used to own a store in the Mall of America, which is right next to their office in Minnesota, where I live. That would scan people. the The thing was to create a 3D family portrait, and so a family could go stand in their scanner and get scanned, and then they would clean it up and do a 3D printout and then mail it to them a few days later. But I went in there several times, and over the years that they owned the store, and they scanned me, and then that scan was processed through Ar- ArcVision's. I forget what it's called, but they have a thing where they can process that and turn it into an RPC. So I've
Mm-hmm.
been able to use my 3D version of me in Enscape renderings, but then we sent it to Fuser, and they actually rigged it up into one of their avatar characters. So install out of the box with Fuser, you can change your avatar to different, like male, female, and construction worker or business person, and one of them's just Dan Stine.
The polar bear.
The polar bear himself. Look at you. Now you're virtually famous.
That's exactly.
So now we can go into that interface and say conjure a Stein, and it pops up Dan Stein.
Yep.
So what do you like better? You like AR or VR better?
Well, it depends on the project, and actually getting, just real quick, I thought about this too. Back to your question about pushing out the Julio experience.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah.
Oftentimes, I think it's best to be there the first time with them
Yes.
and walk them through it. But after that, once they figured it out, it takes like 30 seconds to train somebody on how
Sure.
to use it. Then you tell them you've pushed something new,
Yeah.
and they know how to go look at it. But uh, it
I
depends.
would think maybe the first or second time would be a
Mhm.
good way to do it because then you're there and the client can tell you, "Oh yeah, we got this figured out."
Yeah, and it depends on how savvy the client is too. But
Right, right.
for VR versus AR, AR is particularly compelling on
Uh-huh.
remodel projects. So if you have an
Oh.
existing space, that the whole notion of augmented reality is to position this holographic model within an existing space. And so as you're looking up, if there's an existing vaulted ceiling with a skylight, that's what you see. But superimposed in that, you might see ceiling fans suspended, like a new ceiling fan that's this holographic image, and you might see ductwork. And the cool thing Fuser does with export to HoloLens is it actually maintains the textures in Revit. It simplifies them, and it
Hmm.
also simplifies some geometry because the HoloLens can only hold so much information before it starts getting really clunky, or depending on what software you're using, it won't even let you upload certain sized models. But then for new projects like this hospital we're working on, we've had um, like a neurosurgeon standing and looking at three different operating suite layouts and describing what they liked. It's just much more crisp and vibrant, and we're doing that with wireless VR too, by the way, so they can have a lot more flexibility to walk around and spin around in circles if they want. If you're doing that with the AR or the HoloLens, it's not quite as vibrant and crisp as the fully immersive VR. And then, of course, the other factor is whether it's going to be anywhere near daylight. So even the new HoloLens isn't particularly
Oh, I see.
great when with the contrast of daylight sort of washing out the holographic projection on the lens. So it's better to be in just a little bit dimmer lit spaces for the best experience. But in my experience, nobody's really ever gotten motion sick with the HoloLens because you
Hmm.
still have your peripheral vision. You can still see your surroundings. Whereas with VR, depending on the quality of your hardware and the size of the model, it can get pretty choppy sometimes, and people get sort of motion sick.
Does that happen a lot, or what would you say the percentage is on that?
It's pretty low. I mean,
Is it?
for us, it's pretty low because I kind of manage that carefully. Test it before I bring it to the client. And sometimes that means cropping the model, but we have RTX 6000 graphics cards, and they they have a lot of memory and bandwidth, and then really high-end computers. We actually typically bring a desktop with us if we're working on a really big project.
Are you finding the Quadro cards much better than the regular gaming GTX
Well, I
cards?
mean, that's a big can of worms.
I know
uh,
that's what we do here at BIMThoughts. We let the worms out.
I've written some things about that on my blog, and I think the main differentiator is if you have a large project with tons of high, like 4K textures, and you need to get 15, 16 gigabytes of GPU memory in use,
Uh-huh.
the 2080 graphics card. I think those have like 8 or 12.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can do things again to manage that and crop the model or omit things, but that's really the main thing I would say that's different is just the GPU memory. I think the Titan card might actually have more horsepower than the 6000 in terms of cores or GPU
Yeah.
cores or something like that. So,
I recently upgraded my workstation at home from an old i7 to one of them new fancy AMDs.
hmm
I got the 7 3800X. In retrospect, I should have got the 3700X or paid more and got the 9, but because the I guess the price performance on the 38 versus 37 leaves a lot to be desired. But
Well,
anyway,
and to be fair, when you're paying for it out of your own pocket, that's also can be
yes,
a different discussion.
yes, and this was my pocket money,
Yep.
so
Dana, you it sounded like you had a question or a comment.
I did. You mentioned that you had a client that wanted you to bring this to the groundbreaking. Are you seeing that often? Like, how do you see this changing the industry from the client side? Are they ready and able to really play in the AR VR realm with you from the beginning, or is it something that you have to coach them on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, just a little kind of comment just before before I answer that. So 2 years ago, I presented at the NVIDIA GTC conference in Silicon Valley, and then also at this this theater talk at AU this past November, and I started the presentation with this sort of provocative statement, and it just said, "It doesn't matter what you think," and then I went on to say, what really matters is what the client thinks. And then all these faces of client pictures in interactions of VR started popping up on the screen. And then I said, my experience, it's been overwhelming that the client just absolutely loves this. And I've talked to a lot of my peers, our peers, that, they're like, oh, I don't know if this is really worth it. And I mean, my experience, the clients absolutely loved it. And they have asked us to bring it to the groundbreaking, and we even brought it to a ribbon cutting for this transportation hub that we designed. We were showing virtually the same building that everybody was standing in, but there was an interesting story there to say, that door that you're looking at is the door right behind you, and it's a lot easier to move it here virtually than it is there once it's built. And there's some flow thing that the client didn't think of until they saw it built, right? So I think it's been highly successful, and we've actually built out three fully dedicated, well, two of them are fully dedicated VR spaces in our Minneapolis and our Duluth office. And then one is sort of a multi-purpose space, but it has the sensors dropping from the ceiling that are 22 feet apart diagonally with the wireless headset. A person can walk around, and we have brought the wireless setup actually on the road. So for this hospital project, I personally have delivered 20 hours of actually paid VR services. So it's not always just something that we're doing as a marketing thing or for free. And they found quite a bit of value to that. One of those was an 8-hour block where they put posters up all over the hospital and said, anytime today, if you have a break, come on into their auditorium, which was just basically a large conference room that we cleared out two spaces and had two VR stations set up. And that turned out to be pretty cool because some of them were really getting into it. And because it was wireless, one of the nurses had an idea. We should get a wheelchair. I know where one is. And next thing you know, we're moving around in wheelchairs in VR, and because your level of the headset is calibrated to the floor, so if you're standing or sitting, it's the right perspective.
It's really cool.
I think what we're hearing here, Dan, is that it's definitely beneficial for the client, AR, VR. Uh, but as the firm that's putting it on, you don't want to do it on the cheap. You want to invest in the proper tools, do your homework like you have with the different platforms, and make sure that when the clients use it, it is an enjoyable experience as opposed to something that they're going to feel isn't beneficial.
Absolutely. And until recently, there are some pretty nice laptops now out there where you can get a RTX 5000 and really good processing power for the CPU and the RAM, and I have seen some pretty nice laptops, but until recently, and we don't even really have one of those laptops yet. So really, we're still bringing a full-blown desktop or two. I mentioned that one experience where we had two setups. Another quick example is kind of fun. One of the design architects, I can't remember her name. She works for Ewing Cole in Philadelphia, and she was here with us when we were showing the physicians the operating room options, and she was trying it out before all the hospital staff showed up, and she was walking around the operating room, and I said, this is actually, she was jumping around too, so she had accidentally jumped up on top of the operating room table, so she was standing like really high up almost to the ceiling. And I said, if you were to lay down right now, it'd be like you're laying on the operating room table. And of course, this is her space, she designed it. Next thing you know, she's laying on the floor in the room.
How do you see this type of technology and in the future of this type of technology changing the way we work as architects, engineer, and contractors? I mean, like obviously, and I mean, even sometimes I'm seeing it in interviews. They're requesting this type of visualization. Um,
We've used it in a couple interviews, and just recently I did a little impromptu like photo shoot of the Trimble XR10 with the HoloLens 2 with some of our landscape architects, like wearing it, and then I took some snapshots within the device, which it has the ability to take an image of what your composition, or I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but where it merges what the hologram and the real background together, and then took some pictures of them wearing it, and they used it in a proposal. But similar to Dana, to what you had mentioned earlier about like Ulio and its multi-user experience, and I know Insight VR and Iris VR and Fuser has the ability to have multiple people in the same model. I think as the costs of the devices continue to come down, I, I bet a lot of people start to have these at their desks, and instead of having a Skype or a team meeting, you can put on this headset and all be looking at the model and commenting on it. And Fuser has the ability to both in AR and VR to like select the object, and in AR you can voice dictate a comment about the thing you have selected. Now, to be honest, I don't know how you get that back out of that environment. I've never tried, but the concept is cool. And well, I guess I'll mention the Trimble software in a minute, but I think there's going to be a lot more collaborative opportunities in VR. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dana? It sounds like you've used that a little bit with Ulio.
Yeah, no, I think that the conference room style is definitely really, really beneficial. I guess I'm just really interested in, just our day-to-day work and how, I think, our typical designers are really starting to get used to Enscape and being able to use that not just as a design tool, but also as a coordination tool. And so, like you said, maybe, as the technology and, maybe we all have laptops, gaming laptops or desktops at our workstations, or maybe in the corners of our conference rooms, where we can set this type of environment up. And I think it's just really interesting how it's becoming so integrated in how we work and document.
Yeah, and we use Enscape quite a bit in that capacity, but not in VR, right? Like in a conference room, it's up on a screen and everybody's looking at that. Um, but I definitely see that coming. I don't know if Enscape's going to support multi-user or not, but other tools do that, and it is pretty cool.
It is very cool. Multi-user Inkscape would be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So the Trimble XR10.
Yeah, so the hardware itself is
Mm-hmm.
pretty impressive. I already mentioned it has like twice the field of view, which is
Mm-hmm.
a really refreshing experience. If I assume all three of you have tried a HoloLens 1, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So you basically have this what I can equate to a postage stamp size view in front of you.
Uh-huh.
I always try and kind of set the expectations just before a person puts it on. It's going to be kind of a small field of view, and for the HoloLens 1, but
Mm-hmm.
once you get used to it, it's not so bad. But the new one,
Right.
it's much wider, and it pretty much goes all the way up to as high as you can see, and you can still
Wow.
kind of see the bottom. You still need to have some peripheral vision so you don't run into things,
Mm-hmm.
because it can be quite opaque, if you're looking at a projected holographic proposed
Oh,
wall.
yeah.
But some of the other features that are pretty awesome, this is above and beyond just the HoloLens 2 by itself. It's basically Trimble getting the parts and pieces and putting it together so that it snaps into a standard hard hat. And so there's an interesting point there. If you have one or are getting one, the hard hat can actually just be popped out, and the clips that are on the side that are pretty standard for like ear protection or face shields, you can get a different colored hard hat or
Mm-hmm.
one with a custom logo. But the whole front visor actually flips up almost a full 180 degrees to get
Wow.
out of the way if you need to just get out of that environment for a minute to look at something, or to walk around some unsafe area, or to have a conversation, to look at plans. And then, because this thing is totally dialed in for use on the construction site, it has bone conduction headphones that press up against the back of your skull, just behind your ear.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually an add-on that can be purchased with it, and it connects to the main processor of the HoloLens via Bluetooth. But it's pretty streamlined in how it works, so
That's
that's been
cool.
cool.
I'm looking at the picture of one right now, and it doesn't look like the Spaceball helmet that we saw at AU a few years ago. It actually looks like a real hard hat.
Yeah, it's really nice. And on
Mm-hmm.
our HoloLens 1, we had bought the Trimble modified hard hat that was compatible with the HoloLens 1 and didn't void the warranty. And once we put that on a hard hat, we never took it off because it was the easiest way to get the thing on and off, and it supported all the weight of the fairly heavy device, across the top of your head. And that's true with this new one as well. You put this hard hat on and you ratchet it, snug on your head, and it doesn't move around. But the one of the cool things that was sort of, I didn't really know what to expect on this, but it was pretty awesome. Is when you turn it on, it actually, because I have it set up now, when I turn it on, it scans my iris and uses that for my Windows login password, because the thing has Microsoft Windows for AR on it. So it scans my eyes and uses that as my login.
That's
And then
cool.
if I were to give it to Bill, you put it on, it scans your eyes and knows you're not me. So then it emits
Mm-hmm.
these lasers. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Intruder, intruder.
Stun. Stun.
No, but it'll recognize that you're not me, and then it'll offer this calibration experience where you
Oh,
sort
okay.
of follow this gem around with your eye so that it,
Mm-hmm.
it helps with the eye-hand coordination of the menus and things. And so that gets me to the next thing. The whole interface is so much more intuitive and elegant than the original HoloLens. When you hold your hands out in front of you, it recognizes all your digits. And so if there's a place where you have to enter your password, this
Mm-hmm.
full keyboard shows up and you can
Mm.
essentially use all your fingers on it. Whereas the old one, there's always just a dot in the middle of the screen, and you had to point the dot at the letter, D, and then do this
Mm.
little air tap thing.
So
So,
what if you're a shop teacher?
and you're missing a digit.
Yeah.
Well, you can still hunt and peck too. I mean,
Oh,
that's
okay.
really sort of how I do it, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
So you can hunt and peck,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then throughout the entire experience, there's one thing you can do to always get back to the main menu, and that's to hold your left hand up with your palm facing you,
Mm-hmm.
and on your wrist is a little hologram of a Microsoft logo.
Oh.
So no matter wherever you hold your hand, it recognizes your hand. And apparently, if you get the real tattoo of that, it's more responsive. No, I'm just kidding. But
It's sort of like getting a tattoo of a zoom on your arm or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, a question, Dan, as we're drawn to a close here, what made you go for the Trimble version versus the
Ooh,
standard
that's a
version?
really good question. And because of the cost difference, I was asked that a lot internally. Um, the number one reason is, if you ever have any intention of bringing this onto a construction site, you need to have a hard hat. And this one has been tested and is ANSI compliant and some other European standards compliant, meaning that as an assembly, it's been tested and found to pass the safety tests. So we've done this multiple times now. Right across the street from us, out the window, conference room I'm sitting in is corporate headquarters for Minnesota Power that we're doing a bunch of work for them on right now, and their entire first floor about 4 months ago is completely gutted, and we brought the HoloLens 1 in there, and we're able to walk all over the space and look at the new layout, and the client was able to wear it. Um, and then another project that we're working on recently, just two in the last 4 months that we're in an active construction site and you have to have safety glasses, you can actually have your regular glasses or safety glasses on under the HoloLens. The lens itself is safety glass like quality, but it doesn't offer the side protection that a regular set of safety glasses have. So that's the number one reason, is if you bring it on a construction site, you have to have a hard hat. There's another company that at AU was showing like the HoloLens 2 on a regular hard hat, but I asked them if it was ANSI certified, and they said they were working on it. So that meant no.
Did the fact that they were going to release the Trimble branded version before you could get access to the regular one play into it as well?
No, actually, just because we need the hard hat, it's why we went this route. And actually, I should mention too that the Fuser software actually doesn't work on the HoloLens 2 yet. Like, it turns out HoloLens 1 software isn't really compatible with HoloLens 2, and sort of makes sense. So we're still waiting on that. But Trimble Connect is this whole ecosystem that Trimble has had for a while. And by the way, we have survey crews in our company, like a couple dozen, and they all use Trimble hardware and do use Trimble Connect to share, like, it's cloud storage basically for their devices or their data collectors. But for the augmented reality, there's an add-in for Revit, and you can export the model and then load that. So right now we can still load a Revit model into the HoloLens 2 using that workflow. But this is highly optimized for the construction phase of a project, so you're not getting the textures, and there isn't some of the voice commands that I described earlier. But there are some interesting opportunities within this device to initiate ASIs and architectural supplemental information. And there's a really cool, so when you hold your left hand up, there's another menu then that shows up for Trimble. And there's a section box mode, which is just like the section box in Revit, where you grab one side of it and drag it through the model, and the model just cuts away smoothly, which is a pretty cool experience.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Dan, for being on. Any final thoughts before we let Dan go to his normal day?
I got nothing.
Nothing.
It was an honor to be part of the podcast with the legendary polar bear himself.
The polar bear himself.
We never really described what that means. I don't think.
That's a good closing comment, Dan. Just tell us about your bike ride to work.
Yeah, so particularly this year, and I did it a few years ago, but my son just got his driver's license, and in an effort to exercise more and let him be a little more independent, drive himself to and from school, I've been biking every day this winter, and I think the coldest has been about 15 below, which is, I don't know, like minus 20 something. Well, I don't know what that is actually.
It's cold, just cold.
It's not that cold. Minus 16 would be cold.
Today it's yeah, so minus 15, yeah, minus 16. So minus 15 is about the coldest I've ridden this winter. And it's about a 5 mile ride, and I have studded tires, so they're little metal spikes that stick to the ice, because regular rubber tires don't stick to ice. And then the 2/3 of the path I ride on is actually not streets; they're bike paths, or what's called the lake walk along the edge of Lake Superior that I live on. And they actually plow that every day if it snows. So
They do it just for you, because you're probably the only fool out there riding his bike.
No, there's a couple. Actually, even at work here, we have this bike storage room where you hang your bikes on the wall, so you can get a bunch of them in there. Well, this time of year, there's only two of us, so we don't even have to hang our bikes. Just prop them up against the wall.
All right, Dan, Carl, Dana, thank you for joining me.
Thank you guys, as always.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll be on again real soon, so don't worry.